Disclaimer: please do not harass, stalk, or cause harm to anyone mentioned in this video. This video is not a call to action. It is about bringing awareness to a toxic young adult whose actions brought harm to my best friend, and I'm sick of being silent about it. This video would not have been made without my best friend's permission. However, all opinions gathered from screenshots, written answers, and videos are mine and mine alone and are assumptions. Once again, do not harass, stalk, or cause harm to anyone mentioned in this video. Every statement following evidence is a personal assumption, and any actions accused are alleged. Thank you. I think everyone's greatest fear on the internet is having their actual real life ruined by an online call-out post. It's a very real and very valid fear to have. Imagine working on a passion project in your free time and you have a falling out with your friends and the people you hired. And 3 months after you cut ties with them, they make a video of the falling out publicly on YouTube with missing context and misinformation. That video, which only has 2K views, is the reason you can't get jobs and lose opportunities, causing a mental spiral deeper than the original fallout, all because it pops up when employers Google your real name. That was a gross oversimplification of what happened to my best friend, Rayne. Rayne was the creator and leader of the small, and I mean small, indie production group known as Rainstorm Productions, or RSP. RSP started as an informal group of fellow voice actors and one sprite artist, all compensated and directed by Rayne to start creating her own original series on YouTube. These series would be Little Birdie and Crystal View. All of the compensation would be coming from Rayne's own paycheck from her full-time job. However, when her sprite artist left the project, as it was too much work for one artist to do, Rayne decided that when she hired a new artist to make sure that they don't get overwhelmed with the workload by getting assistants to help with line art, coloring, shading, and backgrounds. I was one of those assistants. I was hired at first just to do the flat colors for both the backgrounds and the characters for Little Birdie, before being hired to do shading, effects, and dialogue bubbles as well, after I requested more work. The reason I requested more work was mostly because I had the time, as I was unemployed and freshly out of college, and because I would be paid double the amount for doing 2 jobs that were basically coloring a coloring page. I worked on all of episode 3 and some of episode 4 before quitting in early May 2024 because I just started my new full-time job and I wasn't sure how I could balance both a full-time job and freelancing on a big project in my free time. All that to say, I experienced RSP as an artist for 2 roles and enjoyed working for Rayne. So much so, I looked on Casting Call to see if I could reapply once I got settled into my full-time job and had a good balance. They didn't have any artist positions opened at the time, but the point is I wanted to work for her again. Even though the pay was low for the work, even though the payments were late by a month, I still really had fun working on a project that the creator was really excited about. Plus, I knew she was good for it. She was super transparent about the funding only being from her paycheck, and that she had to pay people in turns every 2 weeks or so when she had enough to pay everyone in that category, like all the voice actors at once and all the artists at once. Not to mention, she'd check in with me all the time for if the work got too much or if I was quiet during meetings. All of which I was fine with, by the way, because, again, she was very transparent and gave us all dates on when to expect payments. So it was a shock to me when Rayne announced on her friend's server that I joined shortly after quitting that RSP was being dissolved. It wouldn't be until much later when Rayne and I reconnected that I would be told what happened. Hearing Rayne's side, I felt a lot of anger and honestly befuddlement. Because remember, I was a part of this team once and I had no idea what would cause someone to blow it up. Over $35 no less. Missed payments were one thing. I experienced that myself. Hell, I wasn't paid until after I quit, but I was paid, overpaid, technically. I had to send some of the money back as Rayne accidentally overpaid me, but then I heard the other side of the story via Candaru's video. Of course, it was because she joined Rayne's public server to blast it to the masses, not for petty reasons, I'm sure. Anyway, I watched the video, and if you thought I felt anger and befuddlement before, well, dear listener, I was fucking pissed. Oh, I wanted to raise hell. I wanted to go off in her comment section, and I never do that. I wanted to make a response then and there, but Rayne stopped me, because it was one video, barely capping at 2K views. It would be a part of the scars on her back from RSP, and that would be it. But that little video, full of implications and filth and missing information, that I couldn't help wanting to ask for clarification on, as it kept itching away at me. What exactly did the admin team do to try and prevent this? How could they expect livable wages off of one woman's bi-weekly paycheck? Why didn't Rayne pay the streamers? Why was Rayne always behind on payments? Where did the $35 come from? And so the questions remained unexposed, their answers and their truth hidden away for only my ears to hear. Until one day, Rayne gave me the green light to make this video and expose the answers and truth that have always been there, albeit pigeonholed and censored for a misguided young adult's narrative. In this video, I plan to address the above questions as well as directly address Candaru's implication towards Rayne's character. This will no doubt be a long video, as I intend to address each implication directly, as well as any concerns that were brought up in the comments and in Candaru's video. I'll do my best to divide the video into chapters and be clear with any evidence I use. Now, despite my clear bias to defend Rayne within an inch of my life, with her begging me not to, I won't be waving away Rayne's wrongs. She was late on payments. A lot of payments. But I ask you this, dear listener. If a man who skips on his bill comes back the next day to pay it in full, is he a thief? Or is he a man who didn't have the means at the time to pay what he owes? As you ponder on that, let's discuss Candaru's first assertion towards Rayne's character. Rayne underpays and overworks her staff. Before we discuss the rates, let's talk about the budget intended for RSP. Now, as mentioned earlier, RSP was entirely funded by Rayne's bi-weekly paycheck, or rather, what was left over. In a written interview with Rayne, I asked her to break down how the budget of RSP was made and how much of her personal paycheck went to paying the team. Rayne states that 50 to 80% of every paycheck went to her wife to pay for their homes, bills, etc. The other 20 to 50% went to RSP. Let's do a little hypothetical math. Let's say Rayne makes the living wage in her area of $20 an hour. So every 2 weeks, she'd get $1,600 a paycheck pre-tax. And let's say post-taxes for her area, she gets roughly $1,400, rounding up and excluding other pre-tax reductions. Okay, so their final paycheck is $1,400. According to Rayne's rough percentages, anywhere from $700 to $1,120 will go to her wife to help pay with bills and take care of the house and get food and household products and take care of the pets, what have you. This leaves $700 to $280 to pay RSP staff bi-weekly, or $1,400 to $530 a month. Now, I don't know about y'all, but as someone who pays bills, I know that what remains after paying utilities is often a gamble. Though, you can predict how much your utilities cost after knowing that you'll use more power during the winter or colder months than during the summer. At least, that's how it is for me as someone who lives in Appalachia. Keep that in mind as it's relevant for later. Now, let's talk about rate. We'll use the 3 rates we know for this part. Candaru's rate as a script editor, which is $35 a script. Candaru's rate as an admin, which is $100 a month. And my rate as a colorist and effects artist, which was $300 an episode. Let's say in this hypothetical month, an episode gets finished. And in the time it takes me to finish the episode as the colorist and effects artist, Candaru edits 5 scripts while being an admin, making the total Rayne owes the both of us $575, which is already not good if it's a high cost month for bills, but not too bad if it's a low cost month. However, it's not just me working on that episode. There's also the main sketch artist and line artists that do work before me, so tack on another $300 for the both of them. And let's not forget the other 2 admins, Mac and Crystal. They need to be paid this month too. Tack on another $200. And fuck it, I don't know Mac's exact rate, but let's say for a 15-minute episode, it's $150. Tack that onto the total too. I'll just have Crystal's rate as a colorist be part of the $300 from the other artists just to give Rayne a bit of a fighting chance. So add that all together and you get a whopping $1,225 that Rayne owes for this hypothetical month. That's a shit ton of money. That's not including other editors or sound designers or voice actors. That can pile up fast. So it begs the question, if you can't pay the staff you have, why have that many on payroll? Well, because Rayne doesn't want to overwhelm her artists and creative staff. As someone whose sprite artist had to quit due to the burnout caused by doing all the work herself, Rayne didn't want to do that to another artist again. So she checked in on people. She asked if they were overwhelmed or needed any help, and then she would turn around and hire more artists to help aid the burden. So 4 artists became 8 to have one team for each project, became 9 to help with backgrounds, and she was always transparent about the rates people would be compensated for and the planned deadline. Not to mention that if we needed the deadline moved, she'd move it, like she was super accommodating. Rayne states, anyone that came into RSP signed agreements and contracts that outlined the pay that I was able to afford. There was always an open discussion before anyone signed anything, and negotiating of rates where we could. I tried to be fair with what I had at the time. This is 100% true, as I went through the same thing when I was first hired. I was given a contract that outlined $150 for a colorist and laid down how many unique frames that would cover, because, again, it's digital art, and the copy and paste tool exists. Some of these frames are pretty minor in changes, so it's not hard to see why the pay is as low as it is. And again, it's from one girl's paycheck. I do want to point out here, just real quick, Candaru's part in the video where she states,
the pay was $35 a script, and the scripts ranged from around 10 to 20 minutes long, which wasn't great pay, but I had tons of free time on my hands, and I was building up a fund to move out.
And later in the video, she adds,
I mean, I didn't have much to compare my own pay to, and I was fine with my rate because each script took me like an hour tops for the first round of edits.
So it takes Candaru roughly an hour to edit a script, and if we check out the average rate for script editors, we get $33 an hour, which isn't bad when compared to the flat rate Candaru did for a 1 hour long task. Just saying. This is a very long and convoluted way to say Rayne did the best with what she had. She made it obvious in every job posting, in every contract, in every DM, and in every weekly art check-in that this was what she could afford for the work she was asking for, and she understood that the work was time-consuming to do on one's own. No one was forced to agree. No one was guilt-tripped into staying on. When I wanted to leave so I could focus on my full-time job, Rayne was more than willing to let me go the second my replacement was trained and ready, something that I was more than willing to do. It's just like an actual job, like you would train your replacement usually. And also, people quitting wasn't an uncommon occurrence. In our conversation discussing my quitting, Rayne said she was just glad I wasn't ghosting her, which, like, I wasn't gonna do anyway, but it implies that many have quit that way before. Rayne never held it against me or any of our artists for putting ourselves first. She understood how tough it was to be an artist and did her best to compensate as fairly as she could afford. And when that compensation wasn't enough, she didn't beg. She didn't plead. She let us go and focus on work that will pay the bills. That's another thing I want to point out in Candaru's video and in some of the comments made by former staff. Most everyone seemed to apply and work for RSP not to pay bills, but to get some extra money on the side. For Candaru, it was a moving out fund. For Mac, it was a way to get some extra work. For me, it was to build a portfolio and work experience. Point is, we all were aware that this shit wasn't paying jack, and that wasn't the problem then, so why is it now? Let's talk about the late payments and Candaru's next implication of Rayne's character. Rayne delays payments intentionally or with disregard to her staff. Now, the word intentionally is a strong accusation to make. However, in Candaru's video, she implies that the reason why Rayne was behind on paying her staff was due to her lack of control over her own spending.
And then I hear she's paying somewhere around $40 to $60 every month for a commissioned piece of Zodiac-themed artwork, which she then raffles off on the Patreon, which only has 3 patrons. And I was happy to keep doing my job, which consisted 90% of calming down Rayne from panic attacks, followed by manic episodes of wanting to spend money on merchandise for an audience that didn't exist.
And not to mention Natalie's own claim given to us by Candaru in her video, where Natalie claims that Rayne constantly quit jobs after less than 3 days of work. But we'll get to her and Stevie later in the video. All that to say, let's ask the obvious question. Why? Why spend that money on Patreon rather than focus on paying the RSP staff? Well, according to Rayne, she was advised to focus on getting the numbers up. Quote, "To be transparent, my admin team and some of the people in my life that had businesses before told me that everything was about numbers. like how much you make, how many people watch your content in order to be profitable. That's why I think I tried to get extras going for the patrons in streams to engage with the audience, end quote. This, of course, makes sense. Nowadays on the internet, your projects need to have millions of views to even have a chance to be in a pitch meeting to get greenlit. Original ideas are being shoehorned by live-action remakes or generalized for an audience to the point of being pointless. So, of course, in order to secure funding and pay her staff sooner, Rayne tried to make incentives on Patreon to encourage memberships. This applied to merch drops as well. Quote, I wanted to make us look profitable with merch and extra content to bring in more support for the team so that money could be divided and help me cover the costs. The only merch I ever bought was the art that was uploaded to the website, and then I ordered a couple pieces for myself to my home to make sure the quality was nice. End quote. Right, so to Rayne, it was a good idea to invest in merch and make content for Patreon as it could show profitability and provide incentive to support the team. Now, unfortunately, these investments didn't turn out well, which happens with investments, it's a risk. But as someone who freely admits that she doesn't know a lot about running a business, Rayne did the proactive thing by hiring admins meant to aid her as well as a tax professional to give her advice. It was them who suggested making RSP into an LLC. Quote again, the admin team and my tax professional as well encouraged me to sign up as an LLC. I figured because they knew better than I did, I would follow through. End quote. So clearly, a CEO who surrounds themselves with competent advisors and admin to cover their blind spots shows good business practice, right? Right? Aw, come on! Okay, so Candaru's next implication of Rayne's character is that she's grossly incompetent in business. As if she ever claimed to be, but I digress. What I believe this implication means to show is that not only is Rayne incompetent, but she doesn't heed a word of advice from any of the people she hired on her admin team, and gets super sensitive about any critique she gets for not listening to her admins. Now, let's talk about Rayne's admin team. As named in Candaru's video, there was Candaru, hired for her self-proclaimed knowledge of the animation industry.
So we were discussing the animation industry, and I started giving a long lecture about the current state of the internet and what it takes to succeed now versus back in the day, and all the information about the cartoon industry that I learned from back when I wanted to pursue screenwriting for cartoons, blah, blah, blah. And I guess Rayne was impressed with my knowledge or my general air of competence because she offered me a position as a moderator for the server.
Mac, who is
a highly successful music manager who was hired for his legal and financial expertise.
And of course, Crystal, who was hired upon Candaru's personal recommendation despite Crystal's lack of confidence in her new role.
And Crystal, an overworked college student and colorist who was promoted on a whim after I made one comment about how competent she was and how much she knew about the industry. She came to me worried that she wasn't really worthy of the new position, to which I quietly suggested that she take it for the pay and handle making the Twitch announcements.
All good people to have on your admin team to help keep the team afloat. And they helped Rayne a lot with righting the errors that she caused after running the entire show basically by herself. Under the admin's guidance, Rayne put a stop to further production in order to pay back the outstanding payments for her staff. Quote, we had a staff meeting around the end of the year in 2024, and I had my admin team help me budget to get all the outstanding invoices paid by January 2025. As for why this plan never got the chance to be followed through, quote, unfortunately, that plan blew up when Candaru began a public show, and I didn't have the chance to even start that process because people were leaving left and right, calling me names, talking about me behind my back, and I just got overwhelmed, so I shut down, end quote. Okay, remind me what it was that broke the dam for all of this?
Apparently, after the previously mentioned merchandise debacle...
Pause. Sorry. Are you referring to this merchandise debacle? I'm assuming so, since it's the screenshot you used in your video. Take a note of the title of the video for me. Uh-huh. And now let's look at the upload date. Interesting. No matter, I'm sure the merchandise link is promoted in the newer episodes, huh? It wasn't? Weird. Oh, what's that? The only payment Rayne made was for the art itself and a sample of the merch for herself, and the products were part of a made-to-order site similar to Redbubble where people can order a shirt or a sticker and have it made and shipped to them without the need of pre-ordering a large bulk order of merch like Candaru implied. Huh. Weird that Candaru would bring up a merch debacle none of the admin team were involved with, but I digress. I interrupted you. My apologies. Please continue.
Apparently, after the previously mentioned merchandise debacle, Mac had given Rayne one strict rule: never spend money for the company without consulting him first. She agreed to this. But lo and behold, the day after the PowerPoint, she went and signed up for usafundingapplications.org, a site which promised to help companies get grants and funding. And if you Google usafundingapplications.org, the very first result is r/is this a scam, with the top result visible in the preview text, definitely a scam. This website, as you've probably guessed, does not give out actual grants. For $34.95 per month, it supplies resources for where to go to find companies who give out grants.
Ah, yes, my white whale. The $35 that sunk the RSP ship. The straw that broke the camel's back. After months of Rayne throwing her money into content to build her Patreon and to pay for art, to put on made-to-ship shirts and stickers on a website that takes a fee out of the sale of the item, I too would lose it if after an entire meeting intended to budget the remaining money of Rayne's bi-weekly paycheck was disrupted by Rayne spending on something that was not the staff yet again. But here's where it gets oh so juicy, my dearest listener. The $35 Candaru and the admin team believed to have been part of the amount meant to pay off the outstanding invoices was actually a small investment from Rayne's dad the whole time. I know. Quote, when I found that website, I wanted to see what they had to offer, and to get a full view, I had to pay the $35. So, my dad, wanting to help, sent me a mini investment of $35, and I browsed the website. I'm not even fully sure if it was a scam, but once the admin team confronted me about it, I emailed them and got an immediate refund and never heard from that website again. End quote. Oh, but don't just take her word for it. Ta-da! Text screenshots. Obviously censored to protect dear old Pop, but yes, folks, it is real. Rayne is declared innocent of the crime of misusing RSP funds without her admin's permission. Now, of course, I asked Rayne the obvious question. Why didn't you tell them that it wasn't her money? And Rayne, admittedly, wasn't entirely certain. In a private call that I didn't record, Rayne claims a few things could have happened or occurred to her that prevented her from informing her admins the truth. A. She believed that since it was money from her dad, that she didn't need to get permission from Matt, as he only needed to worry about the money allotted for RSP staff. She also didn't want to pressure herself to ask her dad for further investment into RSP, as that isn't something that he does and has no interest in investing anyway. B. Because of the immediate hostile confrontation from her admin team following her informing Mac of what she did, Rayne was more focused on defusing the situation and reacting to the sudden hostility from her perspective than telling them the money was from her dad. C. She was grieving, like literally going through a loss at the time, and didn't consider anything but keeping her mental health safe, and that involved leaving the confrontation as soon as possible. Or D. Genuinely, she could have told them after it happened and forgot. The chat no longer exists, so any evidence of Rayne telling them is only reliant on memory of those involved, and there's just as good of a chance that she didn't tell them either way. But the notion that the $35 wasn't from the RSP staff fund never occurred to the admin team, despite the intention behind having her dad loan her $35 for the site was for the benefit of the team. Quote, I did do what I thought was research and saw good reviews. However, I was still desperately trying to find other ways to pay my team faster because I hated how long they had been waiting. It was impulsive, but my heart was in the right place. End quote. Imagine being so desperate to pay back your staff sooner that you get a $35 loan from your dad to check out a website that claims to give grants to businesses. And yes, it was impulsive, but Rayne wanted everyone to get paid. That was always the goal here. Why do you think Mac was hired as a financial advisor? Why do you think Rayne allowed the stop of production and got an admin meeting together to discuss payment layout? The path to hell is paved with good intentions indeed. All this to say, Rayne wasn't an experienced or knowledgeable business leader at this time, as she's blatantly admitted to the ignorance of her own admin team. But she hired a team to fill those gaps, to give her advice and structure while being as fair as possible to her staff. There was even talk about compensation for streams, for Christ's sake. Streams she never had any obligation to pay for, as she always made it very clear that they were unpaid, and many streams were canceled because people didn't want to do them, with no shame coming from Rayne. Do you see how insane this is? Do you see why I've been losing my mind sitting on this information for months? Everything the staff and admin team complained about was being combated, was being actively worked on, was being considered, and it gets flushed away based on an assumption that Rayne couldn't even defend herself from after having her throat pounced on by a bunch of feral adults trapped in their own echo chamber of Rayne hate. All while she was grieving, by the way, because apparently CEOs can't grieve anymore, and the second someone owns a company, they are no longer human. But as the admins once say, allegedly, everything will fall back on the CEO. Even the overreaction of its admin staff is the CEO's fault. And now, to address the final implication of Candaru's video, Rayne manipulated people with her reactions and emotional responses. This will also be the part of the video where I will discuss Stevie's firing, Natalie's claims delivered by Candaru, and any comments under Candaru's video from former RSP staff about factors that weren't touched on in Candaru's video. As seen in earlier clips played of Candaru's video and in the video itself, Candaru overemphasizes how much of an over-exaggerator Rayne is in their conversations and to stressful situations regarding the company. Though after seeing the full context to some of those screenshots, I can see why she cropped them down, allegedly, because, hey, she could have been fed the misinformation herself, benefit of the doubt, and all that. More than she deserves, honestly, but whatever. Let's start with Stevie, former animator and bridesmaid to Rayne's wedding prior to their firing. I say with quotes, that'll be obvious in a moment. Some background information: according to Rayne, she and Stevie were very close IRL friends, as well as a boss and employee. Quote, Stevie and their husband frequently came over to our home and spent nights hanging out with us, playing games, watching shows, and laughing. I usually made some kind of dessert or snacks as well when we had get-togethers, which sometimes they bought or brought over and we would make to enjoy together. End quote. So, of course, when Stevie came to Rayne asking to step down from production as, quote, they were not in the right headspace for the workload at the time, end quote, Rayne was more than happy to let them do so. And as seen in the screenshots provided, Stevie was totally fine with the loss of the work. And for a while, Stevie remained in the RSP work server as they had become close friends with a lot of the staff on payroll. This became a problem because Rayne had gotten the critique from her admin team that she had to, quote, be less of a friend and more of a business owner so she wouldn't give anyone special treatment, end quote. She felt like Stevie, who no longer had a role in the company, had to be formally let go and removed from the server. I imagine this conundrum of removing your friend from the server with their other friends was a tough action to do. Quote, I definitely had issues separating friendship and work because I was so focused on trying to be a nice/fair boss that all the nitty-gritty and more important details admittedly went over my head. But when I felt like someone was upset, I scrambled to try to make it better, even if it was the wrong move. Hence, I imagine, as to why Rayne reached out to Candaru and the admins to begin with. As her advisors, and since she was aware of her weakness for people she cares about in a professional setting, she trusts Candaru to tell her exactly what she should do.
I told her it's not that hard. Just thank them for all their hard work, tell them you have to let them go for budget reasons, and then pay them whatever's due.
And so Rayne did, sorta. As it wasn't actually for budget reasons, as Candaru assumed, Rayne told Stevie that they had to be removed from the server as they weren't on payroll and would be kicked after their invoice was paid, to which Stevie provided the amount, and Rayne promptly, quote, made sure she was paid, end quote, before Stevie was, quote, removed from the group to keep company information confidential, end quote. Which, of course, is shown in this screenshot provided by Candaru. Actually, can we zoom out a bit? There we go. Love myself some context. Stevie was a little upset about the sudden boot, followed by an email from Mac requesting they sign a termination letter, but as they said in their own words, they understood they had to be booted out. Rather than what Candaru claimed, which was how Rayne lied to the animator about their sudden termination and then blamed it on the admin team, here's the screenshot she used to indicate that information, and here's the whole conversation. Note how the conversation continues, both before and after the cropped screenshot that adds context. Crazy how an out-of-context screenshot makes it seem like everything was out of the blue and that the actions taken were actually actions Rayne's admin team said she should be doing. Moving on, let's discuss Natalie, Rayne's former best friend, thanks for the promotion opportunity, by the way, who let Candaru into her server to see the actions Rayne did that, quote, were nothing compared to what this woman did in her personal life, end quote. Candaru claims that according to Natalie,
she manipulated her best friend into giving her thousands of dollars for her extravagant wedding, constantly quit jobs after less than 3 days of work, tried to lie about owning the legal rights to a song that someone else composed, and frequently gaslit and manipulated everyone around her.
Let's address these claims one at a time, with actual screenshots to back it up rather than clip art. First, the gifting of thousands of dollars to Rayne's extravagant wedding. When I brought this up to Rayne and her wife during a conference call while Rayne was in the hospital and I was planning out this video, the pair immediately were baffled by the word extravagant. Rayne further clarified during the interview, quote, the wedding wasn't extravagant at all. The entire wedding was paid for 50-50 by both my wife and I and some assistance from my dad. He insisted as culturally it's customary and I'm his only daughter, and we were on a tight budget that we stuck to, end quote. Which prompted my follow-up question, what did Natalie pay for? And according to Rayne, the same as everyone else in the bridal party. Quote, the only thing I asked her to pay for was the same as the rest of the bridal party. Her dress, her part of the Airbnb, her travel, and she offered to treat us on the days, nights before to go around town and have some meals and window shopping. End quote. The last part is obviously of her own volition, but Natalie did Venmo Rayne back for the Chinese she DoorDashed for everyone, as did the rest of the bridal party. As for the Airbnb, Natalie did have to pay the upfront cost of it. But don't worry, everyone compensated her their share of the cost. Rayne even paid for one of the artists on RSP that was a longtime friend who agreed to have their paychecks from RSP be used for their costs for their wedding. All their idea, of course. It should be noted as well that Rayne and Amanda ended up paying for Natalie's maid of honor dress in exchange for her to do Rayne's hair and makeup as well as the other two bridesmaids on the wedding day, which was the agreement. Second, Rayne constantly quit after 3 days of work. Now, I'm not one to expose people's medical history or their disabilities, with or without permission, so I won't be doing that. Rayne will though. Quote, I'm honestly not sure where the quitting after 3 days of work came from. Due to my medical disability, finding suitable full-time jobs was, and still is, a constant struggle as I'd either not get hired if I disclosed I had a disability, or if my flare-ups began affecting my work and the situation became unsupportive, I left to find a more suitable company. End quote. Everyone go ahead and mark off ableist on your bingo card. Oh boy, just one more and I get bingo. As someone who lives with someone who struggles to find work that works with their disability, it's kind of shitty how someone who knows someone is disabled, both Natalie and Candaru, can write it off so easily and like it proves bad character. No one should work a job they can't work a long time in, desperate measures or not. That's what I believe anyway, but Rayne is harsher on herself, as most people tend to be. Quote, was leaving to find a more suitable company smart? No. I was doing what I could with the set of cards I've been dealt, and it's never been pretty or easy in my shoes. End quote. Thirdly, Rayne tried to lie about owning the legal rights to a song someone else composed. Gonna go ahead and add context for this that Candaru either neglected to mention or didn't know about, which, if it's the latter, is kinda awful considering you blew up a person's livelihood for this. So, context. Take it away, Rayne. Quote, Natalie and her team composed a beautiful song for me that was in honor of my story Little Birdie, surrounding my characters. It was composed by her and her team and sung by her. I was gifted this on my birthday and ecstatic. I loved it. End quote. Oh, how lovely. A gift to a friend about their story. That's so sweet. But if it was a gift, where does the stealing accusation come from? Well, Rayne loved the song so much she wanted it to be the outro that plays at the end of the episodes of Little Birdie. But because it wasn't composed by her, and rather for her, she asked Mac, the guy whose IRL job is in the music industry, what the legal route would be to have the music in her videos. Quote, "At one point, I had asked Mac what the process would be if I wanted to use the song as an outro in episodes. Once he told me that it would be a big legal process and Natalie's composers would need to be provided royalties, at the time I just kept it as a gift. I asked for advice as I was told to, and Mac had mentioned he could work around it, but I still disagreed. That song has never been shared to anyone." End quote. So, as Rayne states, she left it alone. There was no attempt, no lying, just asking an honest question and changing your mind. If anything, this shows that Rayne respected Natalie and her composers enough to not try to cheat them out of what they were due. And finally, Rayne frequently gaslit and manipulated those around her. Okay, I'm taking the words gaslight and manipulated away from you guys because clearly y'all don't know what they actually mean. As stated in however long it was, probably this entire video at this point, Rayne doesn't gaslight or manipulate. Candaru assumed. Everyone on or in or around RSP that turned on Rayne assumed she made mistakes. But she had good intentions behind how she got into the mess of late payments and to prevent it from getting worse. She relied on her admin team to right her way. How is someone reacting negatively to straight up rude critiques manipulation? How is someone who asks for clarification on payment agreements gaslighting? And how are people who are hired after I left indicators of Rayne's true character? I'm sorry, can we hear from someone who actually knows and worked with Rayne for longer than a year? No, 2. 5. Fuck it, how about 16? Quote, "As far as character counts go, Rayne was always hardworking and tried to be as respectful as she possibly could. And I guarantee that if any of those people who felt uncomfortable with any joke had they said something to let her know, she would have apologized on the spot and stopped. I was in a couple of those podcasts, and it seemed as if they were laughing right along with everyone else. I think there had been an incident to where one person did explain that they felt uncomfortable, and the situation was figured out and stopped. I can't recall a name. I suck with names, and I've since deleted everyone save who I'm friends with in the new group, but he usually hosted the podcast more often than not. Or co-hosted? Jaden? Was that his name? No, was another fella. Sorry, I can't recall. But he was a big player in the RSP company. Wasn't a part of the artist sphere. Under pressure, she seemed to work well, even though she was buzzing with anxiety. And even if she was late with payments, she would let the person know that she knew and would get them paid off. Before I had to get my paychecks held back for the wedding, goodness, in early 2024, there had been a few times that had happened. I always got paid. And let's not forget, RSP started as a group of voice actors directed by Rayne long before these episodes started coming out. In fact, since Candaru wanted to call out Alex specifically for only siding with Rayne because he and the other voice actors were paid on time, which is a lie, by the way, let's get a quick word from the voice actor who worked with Rayne since the start. "I have known Rayne since 2019, both as a friend and as my manager at RSP. In our personal relationship, she has consistently been a caring and concerned friend who genuinely cares about those in her social circles. As a boss and manager, Rayne has always been communicative, fair, and easy to work with. She historically sets clear expectations and creates a supportive environment. My experience working under her leadership at RSP was positive. Disclaimer, these statements reflect my personal experiences and observations in my friendship and working relationship with Rayne. I'm providing this testimony freely and voluntarily without any compensation." And hey, since both Stevie and Natalie were in the bridal party, let's go ahead and get the statements from 2 more. "Rayne has always been incredibly sweet, encouraging, and understanding from everything I've seen. I've known her for around 5 years or so, and in that time, I never felt rushed on a project or pressured into anything uncomfortable. There was a very friendly space on podcasts and other Rayne production group events. And while we were encouraged to attend when we could, nothing that wasn't paid for felt required. As for payment itself, she had always been pretty upfront about this being a self-funded project, and would make it clear when she was running late, as well as trying to give a timeline for when she would be able to. Ultimately, on my end, as long as I did what I needed to in terms of notice and invoices, I would receive payment for that work, and would be notified when my payment would arrive later than expected. Rayne has been a good boss and a great friend, and RSP felt like a safe space for us to be creative and try to bring these visions to life. I've known and been friends with Rayne since 2007. I attended her wedding, was a part of RSP as an editor, and have been around for most major events in her life. In my experience with her, I have known her to always be an empathetic and honest person who always strives to do right by others. She has always strived to create an open and welcoming environment for others and a safe space. I have never known her to ask something of someone without something in return, and she has always paid back what she owes, in some cases going over and above to do so, and has never been afraid to go out of her own pocket to help people who need her help if she has to. Working with RSP under Rayne was a fantastic experience. Expectations were clear, and she was an understanding and flexible leader who worked to accommodate those working with her. I never experienced any issues during my time working with RSP, never experienced concerns with any aspects of my work with her, and she was always open to concerns or complaints and always acted on them exponentially. So before you start throwing your weight around and judge someone's character like you know it, actually make sure you know somebody first. And lastly, the comments. Obviously, only the ones from former RSP staff are the ones I care about, and I'm obviously cherry picking these as most of them are related to things I feel like I already addressed in the main part of the video. If you feel like that's incorrect, let me know, and I'll include the timestamp in my response so you know what part of the video you skimmed over. Not that I blame you for skimming, I mean, look at this thing. Who would have guessed a video about someone's character with appropriate evidence and context would be longer than 18 minutes? Let's start with the elephant in the room, this pinned comment right here. This comment was written by Kai, and as they imply in their comment, Rayne made inappropriate comments towards them despite knowing they were freshly 18, which is not entirely the whole truth. As seen in these screenshots between Natalie and Rayne, Rayne had no idea that Kai had just turned 18. In fact, it was because of Natalie's previous impression of being someone who only hires those over the age of 18 that Rayne had wrongfully assumed that Kai was older than they were. This, of course, bears no excuse as to how Kai felt after hearing those comments pointed at him. And when Rayne was told by Natalie that it made Kai uncomfortable, she immediately stopped and apologized, completely disgusted with herself. Also, I feel the need to add this as an asexual trans man. Some people just talk suggestively, and it's up to you to set that boundary, my dude. Some people are okay with it, some people are not, and that's on you to tell them. You can't be upset when someone crosses a boundary that they didn't know was there. Rayne compliments and is suggestive towards my voice all the time, because to her, a cis woman, that's the best way to reaffirm a trans person's gender and give them reassurance that they pass. It was in good faith by someone who had no idea what gender dysphoria feels like. Okay, next comment. So, I wasn't an animator for RSP, but as an animator, kinda, sorta, I agree that being compensated $3 to $4 a second is awful, but that's why the job says deferred payment on casting call. Rayne can barely afford $1,000 off of a voice-acted webcomic off of one of her paychecks. You think she's going to be able to afford $50 a second? The whole point of the deferred option is to compensate for the total amount at a later date, long after the project is finished, such as if the project got additional funding, ad revenue, or a successful Kickstarter campaign, all of the details of which would have been laid out in the hiring contract you signed, right about here. And that's the video, and all I have to say in response to it. I've said my piece, and I laid out the truth and my experiences as they are. Rayne plans on and is working on continuing her stories at her own pace that she can control with the experience given to her via the fall of RSP. This will be the only and final statement that both she and I will have on this part of Rayne's creative journey, and responses to this video that aren't a comment will be left to rot and wither with time. Before I end the video, I'd like to address Candaru directly, so if you aren't Candaru, click off now, leave a comment if you need clarifications, and I'll get to it when I'm free. Thanks for watching, and have a good day. Oh, hey, I got bingo. Hi, Annalyn. I want to start off by saying I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had to go through the anxiety-inducing situation of waiting for payment for a job you worked. In a world full of stories of scammers getting artists and creatives to do free work, I can see where your mind was going when you made that conclusion that you and the rest of the team were being scammed into doing free labor. And I commend you for having the bravery to stand up to it. I'm confident that if that actually happens to you, you'd be ready to combat it and protect yourself. But girl, this wasn't it. Rayne wasn't scamming you. She was behind. She was behind the second she made the company too big to fund on one paycheck every 2 weeks. And that was a huge oversight on her part and something that should have never happened. And you were right, she should have paused production and worked her way out of that hole, but you never gave her the chance to. She told you what her paychecks were and when she expected them. She planned out how to use them to pay back her artists and staff. You have every right to be upset, to be angry for yourself and for the artists and how the payment process was handled, how the company was handled, as I'm sure that was very frustrating to deal with as someone with no business experience and someone with the belief that they can run it better.
And I could certainly make it better.
But for fuck's sake, girl, leave that shit in a therapist's office. You have convinced yourself in your echo chamber that Rayne was holding out on funds or misusing company funds to get free labor when you know that's not true. I showed you that's not true, and maybe now you understand how nuanced the situation was. Again, Rayne shouldn't have bit off more than she could handle as someone with no business experience. I agree with that. There are risks involved that she wasn't prepared for, such as folks who were green to the freelance industry and aren't used to low-budget work or end-of-project payments. The point is, I get it. You felt the need to warn others and talk about the poor handling of a production team. That's fine. Fucking go for it. But the second you start accusing someone of being a liar, a scammer, a crook, when all they did was require more than one paycheck that they get every 2 weeks to pay an entire team of a company by themselves, that's where you lose me. Y'all got fucking paid. Everyone got paid, even Mac. Okay? So what the hell are you whining about? Genuinely, what is so damn important that you destroy an entire woman's livelihood for? To get a sick thrill out of it? To give your little ego a rub off? We've already seen from your own words that you enjoy doing this shit.
Although in my anger, I did break my facade just a little because my voice cracked when I chuckled and told her that I could destroy her online reputation if I wanted to.
This stopped being a video warning about poor business management and knowing the worth of your work and became a fucking character assassination the moment you talk shit about someone's art. You're probably the type of person to bully someone's art style or writing just because you can't think of a valid reason not to like them. Newsflash, you don't need a valid reason to not like someone. I don't like you and I've never talked to you. Doesn't mean I'm gonna blast your writings or plays or whatever creative thing you do and use it as a reason as to why you're a terrible person. You're a terrible person because of your intended actions, and your intended actions paint your character rather plainly to me. Your intention is not to bring forward a tale of caution or awareness, it's to belittle and ruin the life of someone who's trying to share their stories to the public. All for funds those artists were going to see. That Rayne had every intention of paying and was showing that she had the intentions to. All that work, that hope, that drive, fucking obliterated over $35 fucking dollars that wasn't even part of the budget for the company. But you didn't stop at a video, did you, Annalyn? Does your little echo chamber know about the letter you sent? I bet Stevie does, since they were the one who gave you the name of a mutual coworker to use. Would you like to explain what you did to the public, Annalyn? Or would you rather I not mention the letter you sent to Rayne's wife using her wife's coworker's name that you got off of her Facebook page and sent to their home? You know, the letter where you told Rayne's wife to leave her because when you sue, when, not if, when you sue, she would be liable for all of Rayne's mistakes, and it would be better to cut ties now. You know, that letter. You want to create a reasoning for that, Annalyn? For why it was okay to send a letter to a woman you never met and put input into a relationship you've never seen the inner workings of? To send a letter to a house of someone you threatened with legal action, like sending the letter itself wasn't a fucking threat. Fortunately for you, Amanda ripped it up before there was a picture taken of it, so I can't show proof of it here. But there was a witness present, and both she and Amanda saw the letter, and Amanda threw it away because clearly you aren't worth the paper it was written on. There isn't a man on God's green earth that could ever convince me that that was okay, that this video was okay. Again, you want to complain, you have every right to talk about your experiences. Bring awareness to how to properly run an art team. Talk about valuing your work as an artist. Fuck it, talk about how it's okay to bail on a project you work your ass off on, because in the end, the costs aren't worth it. But you are a fucking liar about the type of person Rayne is. You assume so much about her. You never fucking knew her, never respected her as a human being. And that, and only that, is my problem with your clickbaity video, which you freely admitted to it being within the first minute of the video. You even deleted comments that don't suit your narrative, like when Rayne's wife commented, "This is pathetic, get a life," and you replied with this. Do you honest to God think talking down to someone you're trying to help is actually going to benefit them? Like, are you really that naive? But hey, maybe you're not mature enough for that conversation yet. I want you, and only you, Annalyn, to know that because of your video's impact on Rayne's character, she lost interviews, has lost potential jobs. And while you're grinning over that, let me also add that because of the stress of finding work, because of your video and losing a family member all within the span of a few months, Rayne's health was impacted. And you're a smart girl. You're in your 20s. Read between the lines. You know what I mean when I say that. This was mostly caused from stress from your video about a nuanced situation that you lied in, that you omitted information you know. And when Rayne politely told you to take the video down, you said you didn't omit anything and wouldn't take it down even knowing it was causing harm. Disgusting. Absolutely horrific. Rayne was literally in a hospital room being cordial and polite to you even after all you've done to her, and you can't even muster the common courtesy to take her government name out of a video description when your slander spread beyond the online space? Was this your goal? To ruin a person's life to the point where she felt like she had to give up her dreams? Are you satisfied now? Do you feel like you won? Do you still giggle to yourself when you see the harm you've caused? Disgusting. Thankfully, Rayne's okay now and thriving. She won't let your mud throwing gum up her life. It's called having resilience. So if you, or any of you former RSP people watching this, feel the tiniest bit proud of yourselves for what you did to her, I'll see you all in hell. Until that day, know that Rayne deserves better than you, than any of you, and I'll be sure to send you a fucking postcard while cheering Rayne on to new heights. I believe in her. She is more talented than you could ever imagine, and it's a shame that you don't have the foresight, empathy, or compassion to put yourself in someone else's shoes. God forbid this happened to you. Rayne would have had your fucking back, and she thanks you for showing her who her true friends are. Your loss, assholes.